to 6, a helping hand with your land.
Neil from Essex here today with a new implement, the TrailBlazer Flex. Out today to show you this new piece and some of the improvements that were made to it. About a year ago, we did a video on one of the first generations of this out front mower for a compact piece of equipment. And at the time, we kind of talked about the fact that it's really a new concept, one that was gaining some traction, but really felt like a first generation product where some improvements could be made. Well, this has those improvements on it, and I'm excited to show it to you here today. So this product line has evolved now over the years. The very first mower to come out was the TB-1, one of the very first mowers to go on the loader of your small tractor that allows you to reach out in front of the machine and can also swing off to the side to reach over those pond banks. Now that mower is now discontinued and replaced by two improved models, the TB Max, which maintains that same functionality that can go out in front of the loader or off the side, or this new model, the TB-Flex. The Flex here is the one that's particularly interesting to me. When these guys started going out and prodding customers about the improvements and learning things that they could do for a second generation, they were finding that most people were buying these mowers for that offset feature, which I would totally agree with. Generally, these things are a little too small in order to, say, mow the width of your tractor to do normal brush hogging type work. Guys that are buying these are typically buying them to get into those more challenging areas, and we're using that offset feature. This Flex mower does obviously flex a little bit more. We're going to show you some of that, but by eliminating that mechanism that allows the entire unit to swing back and forth across the machine, you're also saving about $800. So while we've sold a lot of those original models, there's definitely some improvements here that are being made on this second generation. My primary frustration with that first mower was the fact that it was really pretty rigidly tied onto the loader. It didn't have a whole lot of give or flex or ability to contour the ground. This changes that quite a bit. So the hinge point here, rather than being at the edge of the deck, now moves in quite a bit closer to the center. With this pin right here, you can now select fixed positions here if you want this thing to sit at a specific angle, or a vertical position here that actually allows it to move. So I can go over here and lifting probably about 20 pounds of force or so, lifting here with my arms, actually be able to lift this thing up and down, allowing it to contour the ground much, much better than the old models could. Now, on the front side of the mower, that contouring is kind of accomplished with the skid shoes that are on the front, but on the back side of the mower now there's this large roller that runs the whole way across the back with these two big bearings on the bottom. So as you're going along, this is going to follow the ground and allow this thing to move up and down. If you refer back to those old models, this entire roller assembly is a complete addition. There was nothing like this on the older models that gave you this ability to contact the ground and follow it well. On the back of my tractor here, you'll notice this hydraulic power pack. I'm not going to talk about this too much because in those prior videos we spent quite a lot of time on it, but essentially you want to think about the hydraulics on this mower a little bit differently than most attachments that would go onto your front loader that are going to be like a grapple, you know, things that are generally operated with cylinders. When you take that hydraulic flow from a third function or from this power pack and bring that big blade up to speed, when you shut off your hydraulics, you need to be able to have that hydraulic flow return to sump. It needs to go back into this power pack or back into the top of the tractor's transmission housing and not be dead-ended by a third function valve or something snapping closed. We prefer to drive these with this power pack. This is going to give you a little bit more hydraulic flow than what your tractor typically has. It keeps the significant amount of heat that these things generate back inside of this as opposed to in your tractor, and it also can run off of really expensive hydraulic fluid, keeping the fluids isolated from one another. This thing isn't picky about what you run and keeps any trash or wear and that kind of thing in a separated reservoir. So these things add about $1,700 to the cost of one of these mowers. And my recommendation, this is the much better way to buy these things. The plumbing is a lot simple. You'll save some money on the hydraulic setup, and it's overall a much better way to have this thing set up to be plug and play on your tractor without requiring knowledge on how to plumb the third function return circuits. One thing that's unique about the way that this deck is designed versus most other rotary cutters is this spring-loaded front bumper. You'll see this sometimes on the really heavy skid steer rotary cutters that are made for land clearing and that kind of thing. You could take this and push this back, and it reveals these two notched areas right here. This allows you to push up against a tree or something and allow those big swinging blades underneath to work through it and get back in closer to the mower. So you're able to cut off things without necessarily having to push them over and slide them underneath the deck. This allows you to cut that stuff that's out in front of you. So you have a handful of different ways that you can manipulate how this mower sits. Using your loader, you very obviously can lift the thing up and down. Rolling your bucket back and forth, you can change the way that it tilts front and back, and whether you have the thing pulled back and open or towed forward and closed. Something you're going to want to be really careful with because it does throw debris if you have this thing curved back too much. Then you also have a pin here on top. Now this hitch pin can put this thing between a couple different adjustments. In the spot that it's here now, it allows this thing to ride up and down through a nice wide range of motion. That's me lifting about 25 pounds of weight or so in order to pick that thing up and down. There's also a number of side positions here. So if you wanted this to float and not contour, you can pull this pin out, and there are holes here in the side that you can slide that pin back into to allow this thing to hover. If you're wanting to, say, go over top of some really uneven ground and you don't want the thing to dig in the dirt, you just pin this thing in place and it'll stay here up in the air, allowing you to skim across the top of things. All right, so running the TB-Flex, so we're turning our power pack on here at low RPMs, bringing this thing up to speed. If you can see here, I could drop it down over top of this bank. Follow along here. And you'll notice here how I can open up the front a little bit and I can let the rear of this ride on that back roller. And that gives me a much nicer contour than what the older one did. You'll notice here my camera guy stepping back when I use this, and he's doing that appropriately. I mean, this is something that you gotta stay away from. These will throw things. The weight of this mower hanging off of your tractor is significant, so generally they're gonna tell you that you need to have a tractor that weighs at least 3,000 pounds in order to handle this thing hanging out on the loader. I might even go and say a little bit further than that, is you want a 3,000 pound tractor plus one that's really ballasted appropriately. Because even on this MX, I can really feel the thing hanging out there. Right there is one of my favorite things about these hydraulically driven mowers. So you see right there, I got down on a stump, and instead of a regular rotary cutter that bangs around and makes a racket when it encounters things, when this thing hangs up, it just simply slows down and comes to a stop, and the hydraulic system goes up into relief and allows the blades to slow. So it is really great for those really hairy areas where you know you're going to be hitting stuff, and it handles that contact much better than a regular rotary cutter does. There is no doubt from a contouring perspective that this is much, much better than the old one. It just, as I set it down and drive back and forth here, I can really let it ride on that roller, and I don't get the digging in and stuff like we did with the old model. I'd say one shortcoming here would be the fact that I can only work off the right-hand side of the tractor. It's not like I can spin myself around and drive back up because I only have my mower hanging off of this one side. If I give you one thing here that's probably my principal complaint about this offset only setup, is I am always this wide. You look how big I am here driving up the road. With the mower sitting, a 4-foot mower deck basically sitting the whole way off to the side of my machine, I'm really wide. I take up this full lane of traffic driving back and forth. So I am definitely not a compact setup here as I am traveling around. So if there's one negative to this Flex setup, it is that this width here you've always have with you. There is no way to collapse this thing down smaller than this. So those are some of my impressions of this new generation TB-Flex mower. I could tell even just with a couple minutes out running this, there are some significant improvements on this over the prior generation and other mowers that you might see with this kind of design. This offset ability and the way that this thing is able to contour is very notably better than the older models. It doesn't dig in nearly as much and allowed me to get into a lot trickier places, particularly going up onto the hillside. That was a motion in a way of allowing that deck to flex and rotate. There's just a much wider range of motion than what the older models were, so that is a nice improvement for sure. This is a product that we're able to do nationwide shipping on. If you look for the little link or at the description or whatever, it'll take us to our website. Current pricing on this thing right now is $32.95 for the front mower, $17.50 for the power pack, and most of you are going to need about $250 of hoses to reach from the back of the machine out here to the front. If we can help you on one of these pieces, give us a call. We're available at 800-222-3373 or online at Messix.com. TB Max and the TB Flex. Okay, it's got a handful of little design changes. The machine where it's hard to get a traditional. The very first TrailBlazer, I say good words, is that when you're driving, that's a lot better than the old one. Equally as terrifying.